Oh, people tell me they tell me after the fact I'm good. I guess. Oh well. I guess I came back. I don't know why it's doing that. Stream disconnected. Stream disconnected. Lag frames. I think it's this video issue I've been having. Maybe it was the topic of the conversation. It was time to cut it. We need to cut it. Oh, you need to cut it. Let me put this here. Part 2. Closing arguments. All right. All right. Did we make it back? Purple missing alert for iCkEdMeL. I mean, guys are getting hit at the moment. Is it? Okay. Maybe we'll take a look. So Timothy Griffin, an associate with the professor of criminal justice at the University of Nevada, Reno, said he believes that Amber Alert is not effective and therefore it may not be worth to replicate the service. Griffin, who has spent years studying the Amber Alert, said it is rare for a citizen to see the alert and spot the missing child, for the alert to scare an abductor into returning the child. There's just not a lot of reason to believe that when there's an Amber Alert, it's successfully rescuing children from threatening situations, Griffin explained. Thus, I would suspect that would be the experience for any implemented Ebony Alert in California. Bradford said he doesn't see it that way. To him, the new law represents a historic breakthrough in combating racial disparities in the ways the nation handles missing person cases. He said in new news release Monday, he said it will ensure Black missing persons case receive the necessary resource and attention that they haven't in the past. It's better than nothing, he said. Whether Amber Alert or Ebony Alert is going to be 100% effective, we don't go with that false illusion or belief, but it's better than not doing anything at all. All right. So they got the new Ebony Alert coming out for Cali.
All right, good afternoon. Everyone may be seated. All right, Ms. Murad, is the defense ready to proceed with its closing? All right, you may go ahead and bring the jurors in.
It does make you start wondering if they're going to bring other alerts into play too.
Ms. Murad, when you're at the podium, make sure you use the mic if you walk away because it's a recording issue.
Yeah, she keeps doing it.
I keep getting notes from recording that they can't hear you. Not you, but it was Ms. Coakley that was violating the rule. I'm going to make a suggestion for the clip-on mics. I don't know why we don't have them. That would solve it.
Damn, somebody said they don't blame the parents. They wanted to correct the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my friend though. She probably doesn't know the story. Some people say some people old school. You know, the old school, the way these people did things back in the day.
All right, all rise.
Some people are into corporal punishment. That's normal for them. This is beyond that, obviously, I think, but. Heather said, I live in California, so if my daughter goes missing, I need an Ebony Alert and Amber Alert.
All right, everyone may be seated. Ms. Murad, is the defense ready to make its closing? Yes. All right, you may proceed.
Oh. Damn, I had to use up another notification. That sucks. Oh, there we go.
There is not one moment that I want you to think that this defense is about whether or not Ronan deserved the treatment that he got. Because it is not. Or that the fact that he is vulnerable or had medical issues from early childhood is justification for what happened. Because it is not. However, we are in a criminal courtroom. And what you have to determine is whether an act, a horrible act of parenting, a bad act of parenting, bad choices amount to a crime. And in this case, they do not. I told you at the beginning of this trial that Tim Ferriter had to make tough choices based on the experience that he had had with his son, Ronan. And I'll talk about that more in detail. But what I want to start with is sort of the bedrock of any criminal case, which is an understanding of what reasonable doubt is. There is an instruction that you will receive, and we'll talk about that later on in my closing argument.
Approach.
Oh, man. Already. So the defense team picked the right one because I don't think the other guy has. I just think she should do a better job at that than this guy, Wahid. Carly fell asleep. The state was pretty good. She was on fire. I don't blame you though, but yeah, she was on fire. The connection dropped. We're back. We're back. I don't know what happened, man. I've been trying to figure. Me and Lutfi, we think it's the video card, and I'm pretty sure it's under warranty. I have to figure out when's the best time to like. I mean, I don't know if Best Buy will do it or the actual
Objections overruled. You may proceed. And that's without prejudice to the state to address it in rebuttal.
So there's different ways to understand reasonable doubt. And I think that a helpful way to understand it is in terms of sort of the other standards that we have. So at the bottom here, you see reasonable suspicion. And that is like a super low standard. That's why it's on the bottom. So that is the standard that a police officer has to have just to sort of stop you on the street.
Sustained.
When we talk about reasonable doubt, it is in reference, right, to all the other standards, because beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest burden in our justice system. Normally, when we talk about a criminal case, it's different than, for example, a civil case, where you are deciding whether or not something is done by the preponderance of the evidence. That's about 51%. The next level up from that is clear and convincing evidence. And that's the standard required for the government to take your children away.
All right, I'm going to instruct the jury that the court will provide and has provided you with the instruction on what reasonable doubt is. Attorneys can comment on the law that the court has provided, but anything else other than what the court has provided on the law, the attorneys cannot address, and you're to disregard that. So with that instruction, Ms. Murad, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Clear and convincing evidence is the standard by which the government can take your children away from you. And then higher than that, you have beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest burden in our justice system. And this distinction is important because when we talk about bad parenting or someone that shouldn't have their kids, there's a standard for that in the legal system. There's a system in place for that. What you are being asked to do is determine if something is a crime, if it rises to the level of reasonable doubt, such that a person whose liberty and freedom is at stake, as it is in any criminal case, should be found guilty of a crime. You are not being asked whether you condone of Tim Ferriter's actions. I put up an expert, Sheila Rappa, who says she does not condone of Tim Ferriter's actions. And I didn't do that not knowing what she was going to say. This case is about a different sort of location and time than what the state's talking about. There is no dispute that what Tim Ferriter did caused harm to Ronan Ferriter. My own expert got up and told you that. The question before you is whether or not that was done with the appropriate intent to be considered a crime, whether or not those elements that the state mentioned are met. And so I want to talk about those in specific. Let's start with this. What are we actually on trial here for? The state mentioned a instruction towards the end of their closing argument regarding the things that happen in Arizona. And of course, the defense brought some of that in. It offers context. But the decision that you are making is whether or not Tim Ferriter committed a crime during about the 6-week period that he lived in Jupiter, Florida, between January 5th to January 28th. That's when the video goes up in the room. They move in a little bit before Christmas. That is what you are being asked to do. If you believe that Tim Ferriter committed a crime in Arizona based on the testimony, but you do not believe that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he did so in Florida, you must find him not guilty.
Hold up. Because they think he was abusive in Arizona, but not in Florida.
I don't normally do this, but this is a lengthy closing, so I want to make sure that we talk about all the different sort of reasons why Tim is not guilty. I'm going to talk about these all in turn. They apply to different instructions. So rather than taking you through instruction to instruction, I want to focus on the reason for it being not guilty and the instruction that it applies to. So we'll go through these one by one.
Objection.
I first want to start by talking about sort of two ways that you can find Tim not guilty that are pretty related. First, he did not have criminal intent. This applies to every charge, right? Because criminal intent is something that is unique to a crime, as opposed to something in a civil case like negligent intent or something along those lines. Even if you find that the state has proven every element, including that criminal intent element, as to child abuse and aggravated child abuse, you can still find him not guilty because of the parental affirmative defense. Now, the way that that reads is that it is not a crime for a parent of a child to impose reasonable physical discipline on a child for misbehavior under the circumstances, even though physical injury resulted from it. And this is the important part. If you find that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant was not a parent, that's not an issue here, or if you find that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant's physical discipline was not reasonable under the circumstances, you should find him guilty if all the elements of the charge have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a little hard to understand, but this is a two-step process. First, the state has to prove every element of that aggravated child abuse or child abuse beyond a reasonable doubt. And then the second bit is they have to disprove this affirmative defense beyond a reasonable doubt. It is not the burden of the defense to prove to you that it was reasonable. It is the burden of the state to disprove to you that it was not. This trial is not about Ronan's diagnosis, but I understand that it's been something that we've talked about a great deal throughout the course of this case. It is, however, essential to understanding the sort of persistent behavior that Tim Ferriter experienced. And it allows you to understand how difficult it was for Tim Ferriter with Ronan's sort of ongoing behaviors. And I want to start with sort of the thing that's based most in science, which is Dr. Rappa talking about a neuropsychological exam. So that neuropsychological exam, as Dr. Rappa testified to, has multiple parts. And this is testing that the psychological and psychiatric community relies on routinely. And it allows us to have data about a person to explain how they are the way they are and why they are the way they are. This neuropsychological testing has multiple parts, and it includes something from Ronan himself and from an adult parent. Dr. Rappa explained that. And in this particular testing, there was no reason to believe that there were any sort of validity issues with the information that she received. She also said that even though the testing was from just a couple months after January 28th, that doesn't matter because it still is a test of executive functioning. What that testing revealed is that Ronan has clinically elevated levels as it relates to inhibition and emotional regulation. And what Dr. Rappa told us is that means it explains this sort of persistent behavior that's not stopping, that becomes explosive. When Ronan has when Ronan feels angry or has sort of a strong emotional reaction, he's not able to control that in the way another person might be. He also has a lack of inhibition. And that's why when he has consequences, that's not something that he's entirely understanding. She said that it's very hard for someone who tested like Ronan did to be in control of themselves, and they have a lack of insight into their own behaviors. She also explained that this testing, right, goes back to early childhood, and that's not really in dispute. The state's own expert, Dr. Wade Meyer, said that he believes Ronan has probably an attachment type of disorder from the time that he lived in an orphanage. Again, there's no dispute that the Ferriter's actions exacerbated that, right? Dr. Rappa told us that. That's something that the defense is completely conceding. But both Wade Myers and Dr. Rappa say that this is something the Ferriters did not cause. It is from very early childhood neglect. And what we see and what the key is, and Dr. Rappa talked about this, Wade Myers had to concede to it, there are behaviors before 2018, right? That's when we're talking about the timeline, we know that Pierce was born on February 28th of 2019. About a week prior to that, per Ronan's own testimony, a room was built in the garage in Arizona. Before that, while Tracy was pregnant with Pierce, a latch was put on his door in Arizona. So that has to be late 2018, early 2019. Prior to that time, Dr. Rappa testified about records that she reviewed from 2015, elementary school emails about ongoing and persistent behavior. And I asked her, because look, I understand, and the state made light of it, but stealing sprinkles or activities that are just considered childhood behaviors. It's very hard to distinguish what constitutes regular childhood behavior and what constitutes a disorder. And I asked Dr. Rappa that during her direct examination. And what she said is that it is the persistence of these behaviors, that despite there being consequences, despite there being boundaries, they continue and continue and continue. In cross-examination, Ronan admitted in great deal to his own behaviors, right? He admitted to harming other people. He admitted to offering his brother beer as an experiment. Sev De Borzati testified that a time that they were visiting an Airbnb in Sedona, Ronan was found with knives in his backpack. And the cross-examination on that was, well, did he threaten you with a knife? Did he use a knife? An 11-year-old shouldn't have knives in their backpack. Right? That's everyone's common sense. That as a young child, there are certain things, certain boundaries that you cannot cross because you're a kid. Ronan admitted to stealing from his own home, stealing from the parents of some of his friends. He admits to running away. He admitted to breaking into his tablet at his last school in Arizona and searching violent terms that concerned his parents. And that was the reason why he had to get his technology taken away. Kellen McCoy, who was a teacher of Ronan's, testified about an incident that he had with his sister. And in cross-examination, the state was asking Dr. Rappa about these sort of specific incidents, trying to minimize them or showing that, any one act is no big deal. And that's with any kid, right? Any one act that a child does out of being a kid or immaturity is never a big deal. But it's when it continues and doesn't stop over and over and over again, and when it escalates and when it becomes persistent, and when in this case you have a neuropsychological exam that supports that it becomes a disorder and something that is problematic to the child, to the parents, and to everybody that he's around. So Kellen McCoy testified about an incident where Ronan entered his sister's classroom, had her stand up, and humiliated her in front of the entire class. And during cross-examination, I recall Ms. Coakley saying something to Dr. Rappa, and Dr. Rappa was like, no, but it seems small, but that's not the case. And Ms. Coakley interrupted her at that time. But you have to think about the steps it takes, right? To decide to go to an entirely different part of the school. That's what Ronan testified to. Pretend to be another person. Decide to point out your sister. Go to that classroom. Have the courage to come up with this entire story. That is something that gets to the level of being manipulative. And those are the concerns that were happening with Ronan throughout his life. And that's corroborated per Dr. Rappa prior to 2018. Through records that she reviewed, through Ronan's own deposition that she reviewed, through, I think she listed off 25 items or 26 items that she reviewed in coming to her opinion. Dr. Rappa also testified how when you have a lack of trust in a parent-child relationship, and I guess you can rely on your common sense for this, but when you have a kid, right, and they're growing up, you rely on trust. But we rely on that in any relationship that we have, that what we see is what we get. Right? That what we expect when someone says, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this, that they actually follow through with that. And that relationship of trust is really important between a parent and a child. And when it is broken, Dr. Rappa said that the response that a parent has, the natural response, is to control. Right? And we see that in our everyday lives. If you have a kid who's out, joyriding, you don't get the car. Right? If you are someone who is fighting at school, you're going to be in a timeout. You see in this case that it is taken to an extreme, but it is also in response to an extreme, because that kid joyriding who doesn't get their car stops. Most people's children stop when they say, you can't do this anymore. I'm going to take away your items. I'm going to put you in a timeout for a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to ask that you stop doing it. I'm going to ask that you not, hurt people at school. I keep getting emails from school about how your violence is becoming a problem. I need you to stop doing that. Eventually kids stop. But Ronan didn't. It persisted over and over and over again for years. I want to show you a video of how Tim Ferriter responded to Ronan.
To the next step. So if you don't give a shit and you want to run away, see how that takes you. I'm not chasing you this time. See how it goes. If you want, should I put this ankle thing back on you? Because I kind of need to know where you're at, just so you don't hurt yourself. Because you have no fucking idea what's out there. You think you do. All 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, these kids you're around, you might think you know what's going on in the world, but you don't quite know. Give it a try. Go ahead. And I gotta put the ankle bracelet on you. Because I'm responsible, and when I say I'm not giving up, I'm not quitting, you got me forever. So deal with that. But if you want to go throw your shit away, if you want to ruin your life, if you want to destroy this shit, I'm not going through this again and again and again. I don't have time for this shit. I got to deal with no love to the next step.
You can hear Tim Ferriter, and as Rappa said, in the worst tone ever sometimes, attempting to parent right? And it is not perfect. I don't think any parents, would say that their parenting is perfect or even great in retrospect. But what he's telling him is, if you keep running away, I'm going to have to put a monitor on you. And of course, that sounds like an extreme thing to do. But what he tells him is, you're 14 years old. You don't know what's out there in the world. I have to keep you safe. Because if you keep running away on the street in the middle of the night or during the day, you're going to get hurt. Someone is going to harm you. And I am your parent, and I have to keep you safe. And it got to the point where they're talking about putting a monitor on him. That's how often this was happening. And no parent can allow their child to run on the street, right? No parent can allow their child to be lost and not go find them. So he's telling him, you have to stop. He's telling him there is a big world out there and you don't know about it. And I know you think you do, kid, because you're smart, right? You're able to trick people. You're able to convince them that your name's Richard, I think came out in a video. But it is a big world out there. And there are people that could harm you. Tim Ferriter was trying to raise a child who could make it when he's older, without having a criminal record, without having a million issues at school, graduating without getting kicked out, because we saw in the videos that he got kicked out of his last school in Arizona, and with positive social skills. If you are hiding knives and pretending to be people that you are not, and stealing money from your friends' parents, and bringing a scalpel to school, and getting into fights so often that your elementary school is sending emails in the 4th grade. When you are 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, what are you going to be doing when you are 20 years old? And another point I want to make is this idea, when we talk about malice and intent, that this was something that Tim and Tracy Ferriter enjoyed, right? The benefit of your kids growing up, right? I have a bunch of friends with toddlers. They're just hyper vigilant all the time. They have to watch every minute of what that kid does. Because they're going to get hurt. They're going to put their hands in the socket. They're going to, right? That's that life. And as a parent gets older, that goes away a little bit. You can go out to dinner. You can grab a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning. Tracy Ferriter is watching Ronan's laptop, and for a reason, because he has broken into numerous school laptops and hacked into his entire school's IT system. And she says, I need you to do your homework so that I can see it on the camera. This is not fun for them. Waking up in the middle of the night to see if your kid stole an iPad from his sister is not enjoyable for a parent. Staying up in the middle of the night to make sure that your kid isn't doing something they're not supposed to do, keeping that kind of hypervigilance year after year after year for almost a decade, is not something that a parent wishes to do. But they had to keep this type of monitoring on Ronan. And they did. And they did it without getting him arrested. They did it without sending him away. They did it without ending the adoption. There was always a reason, if you go through the videos, and there's a lot of them. I know you watched many of them. If you watch all the videos from inside that room, and I know we watched about 8 hours of it together, you can hear Tim telling Ronan every single time he's in trouble. You did the Chromebook again, right? You can't break into the Chromebook. There was a time, and Ronan admitted to it on cross-examination, where he went into the school, he went into a different teacher's classroom and said that he was evaluating the teacher with the school board. You can hear Tim say that. This idea that it is gratuitous, Ronan even says, discipline to you was always in response to something that you did. And Ronan said yes, whether that was a timeout, whether that was getting yelled at, whether that was getting in trouble, it was always in response to something. And I'll concede what Dr. Rappa said, that the tone was not appropriate and the strategy was not appropriate. That is not in dispute here. But to say that it wasn't reasonable to Tim Ferriter, who had a reason every time it was happening, that is inaccurate. When he talks about the AC, Ronan admitted in his cross-examination, it was right at the end of my cross-examination, I asked him about when he almost started an electrical fire at the home in Arizona, right? And he talked about how he was playing with the lights and tried to mess with the light switch. And he initially said, it wasn't going to be a fire because I would know how to fix that. And I said, that could really hurt somebody. And he said, yeah. So he's not allowed to touch electrical items or, equipment in his room. You can hear when Tim is talking about specifics. We talked about that. So I want to talk now about what you experienced during this trial versus what the Ferriters experienced over the course of time. So this trial, right, is really talking about not just what Ronan went through, but also a parenting relationship. Anytime something's happening to a kid by a parent, there's a relationship there, right? A parenting relationship that spans time. And what you saw was over about a week and a half. I know it feels like forever, but it was about a week and a half. And when you saw Ronan testify, it was about 2 hours. That is not what you are seeing in those videos that the state played. What you are seeing in the videos the state played is after year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 of ongoing issues. And you are
Sustained.
And you are
Jury's instructed to disregard the last comments of counsel.
And what you are seeing is a family at their wit's end. There's no doubt about that. And I don't know a single parent, take away a child, take away all the variables, a child with behavioral issues or a diagnosis or even just, sort of benign behavioral issues. A parent and a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old, a preteen. I don't know a single parent who would want their worst couple months, their worst year with their relationship with their kid filmed on camera for everyone to see, without any context, without any understanding of what was going on the years prior, without any understanding of who they are.
Sustained. Jury is instructed to disregard counsel's comment on her belief on the evidence.
Oh. I mean, he put the camera up. I mean, what? He set the camera up, right? I don't understand. Let me get some quick caffeine.
We talked about whether or not this was in fact malicious punishment. And both Wade Myers and Dr. Rappa testified about that. And they testified in a different manner. Here's what I want to remind you about Wade Myers. The information that Wade Myers had was curated by the state and provided to him in the same way that we provided information to Dr. Rappa. But what he said is that he received 40 videos of the 21,000 that exist in evidence. He received 40 videos of the 8 hours that you watched of the state's evidence and the 3 hours that you watched of the 14-hour video that the defense put in evidence. That is not an entire picture of what happened in this family. In fact, if I remember correctly, when my colleague on cross-examination said, "Are you aware that there are 21,000 videos in this case?" Wade Myers' face visibly was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So his opinions are based on a limited set of information, acknowledging that he may not have the entire picture of what was going on in this family. Dr. Rappa testified that she didn't believe that this was malicious. and you can evaluate the credibility of any expert the way that you want. Dr. Rappa, compared to Wade Myers, testified on cross-examination in a manner that was very honest and not in any way
Sustained.
and not
It'll be up to the jury to determine credibility.
she didn't fight with the state in the way that Wade Myers did, the way that Wade Myers did with the defense. And she admitted to everything as it relates to the harm caused, the fact that this is an inappropriate way to handle a child. That is something that Dr. Rappa said was absolutely true, right? So when she's looking at all this information, she's telling you that the reason it's not malicious is because this was a poor effort at parenting a child that has issues that these parents did not understand and that providers did not give them. She said that it's common in mental health types of situations for families, parents, to get really, really frustrated because they are, Ronan's on clonidine, that's not working. This isn't working for sleep. They're getting advice about limit setting. That's not working. They're getting advice about take him to therapy sometimes. The one-on-one therapy that he had with family counseling wasn't working. It's not changing the behavior in the school. And that's happening year after year after year. And Dr. Rappa said that it's really common in her field, and she's worked with a lot of children who have similar issues to Ronan and a lot of parents in these types of situations as well. And it's very normal to feel extremely frustrated with the mental health system, right? Because you keep doing stuff, you keep taking them to the appointments, and nothing is helping. And not one of these doctors recommended inpatient treatment. Not one of these doctors recommended what Dr. Rappa said would be appropriate treatments for reactive attachment disorder. So they're following the advice that they are receiving, and nothing is helping. When I was talking to Ronan in cross-examination, he had to be reminded of this. But he said that he was going in Arizona to appointments about once a week. So many that he didn't remember who the providers were. So this idea that they didn't try is not true. Ronan himself has said that he was going and seeing people once a week. Both experts testified that there were emails between the schools and the parents talking about Ronan's behavior, trying to figure out how to deal with it. Miss McCoy, the former teacher, testified that after the incident with Nola in the classroom, Tim came with Ronan separately and Tracy went with Nola in order to try and talk to the teacher and figure out what was going on. The idea that these parents were not involved and not trying is distant from the facts. There were also non-medical efforts, and I know that it sounds silly, the meditation, but this is a family that from when this child was a kid was like, okay, what are the non-medical options that we can try? What can we do to burn off his energy? What if we don't give him sugar? Maybe that'll help. What if we don't, put him in karate, jujitsu, put him in these activities like track, what he did in Arizona. He did chess club. In one of the videos, you can hear Tim say, Ronan didn't get it because he stole an iPod or an iTouch, but he said, I was going to get you that gaming computer that you really like because this kid is really good at IT, at gaming, at that kind of stuff. So they're trying to get him into activities that they think will help his behavior because none of the medical interventions were doing it. The state mentioned in their closing argument that after 2019, there was no evidence of any medical treatment. That's not true. When the state was asking Dr. Rappa the same thing, she said, I think there were some appointments with Kenny Miller, and when they started school in Florida right before Christmas of 2021, there's a record that shows that they went to a pediatrician like you're supposed to go to, and that they asked for a referral for a psychiatrist, right? And you can use your common sense here. That's not something that happens overnight in any doctor type of situation. You have to get a referral for psychiatric care.
Think it's enough? Let's see. What else we got?
I want to go now to points 3 and 4 that I had in that sort of initial slide or roadmap. So I want to talk about with you Ronan's sort of life at home. And this goes to the elements that this was not torture, which goes to the aggravated child abuse, and that it was not malicious punishment, which also applies to the aggravated child abuse. Where Ronan lived, whether it is appealing or not, is a room. And I want to show you, this is Defense Exhibit 2.
Uh-oh.
When Ronan moved into his room, this is what it looked like. And you can see the girls' rooms. The photos aren't great, but this is not in size that different from what the girls' rooms are. It's an 8x8, which is about the size of a small room. He has his toys, he has his Legos, he has everything on the walls. This is how the room started. The room itself for Ronan was not punishment. It was his room. And if you look at the videos in State's Exhibit, I think it was 16, you can see Ronan doing things in his room that have nothing to do with being in trouble. He is, there's one video where he's FaceTiming a friend and showing them his room to show kind of where he lived. He's playing games. He's playing with Legos. There's a video in there where Pierce comes in and tries to play Legos with him, and he says, no, I want to play alone right now. Ronan also testified that that room was not always locked. It was locked in the evenings when he was asleep, and it was locked if he was in a timeout. The state also mentioned that, you know, this narrative that this was a secret. The Ferriters hired a contractor to build this room.
Why don't y'all bring him in?
It was not privately done by them. They also had the garage door open for much of the videos that you watched yesterday, where Ronan was coming in and out. And so this is not some sort of secret. The teachers knew. There's emails back and forth about Ronan's behavioral issues. The fact that Ronan had restrictions that other kids did not have or that his siblings did not have was not a secret.
Sustained.
The state's expert characterized, and the state's been characterizing this room as a cell or a box. And I showed you this photo. It's a room with a desk and a bed and toys, and it has stuff on the walls until Ronan took them out or they were taken away from him because he was in trouble. I want to talk to you about the bucket that was placed in the room. Tim says to Ronan in one of the videos that you watched it was one of the videos that the state presented, so it was a couple days ago, it was last week. I don't want you to use it. Call us so that you're not using it. Throughout that 6-week period of time, it is used 2 to 3 times in total. What it is not is deprivation of a bathroom. It is a terrible solution to wanting to make sure that Ronan in the middle of the night cannot get out of his room. Because as you heard Tim Ferriter say in the videos, he is running away. So much so that he needs to place a monitor on him so that he is not running away in the middle of the night, telling people that he's someone he's not, and putting himself in danger. You can see in the videos of the sort of timeouts that Ronan's in, and you can always tell because they're always like, do you still have a bad attitude? Or you don't get your Chromebook for this. You can tell in the videos what's going on that day with the family. And they come in every 15 to 30 minutes, and you can see those in the videos, and they say, do you still have a bad attitude? There's one video where Tim actually lets Ronan out of the timeout because he says, you know what, I feel, you know, I'm not in trouble anymore. So this is on January 23rd at 7:10 p.m.
Give it a shot. So did you get mad when she checked your pockets? No. So don't get rid of it because you earned that. Okay. It's a nail there. It's in the ground there. Not to lie down. Good.
So throughout the videos, you'll see this happen, that they're checking in on him. They're saying, okay, are you still going to act out if we let you out of the room? And that happens to children all the time when they're in a timeout, that they have to act appropriately. They have to come out without a bad attitude. And it's never because, as the state represented, that it's just a bad attitude. If you go through the videos, you will see that there are exact incidents: stealing a Chromebook, pretending to be somebody you're not, causing an issue at school, that it's about. I want to talk a little bit about the actual time that Ronan spent in his room. It's the state's duty to present you with evidence so you can determine what the truth is in any given case. And we talked about in jury selection how the defense can sit there the whole time and not do anything, right? We did not do that, but it's not the burden on the defense. We don't have to cross-examine anybody. We don't have to put on any evidence. We don't have to put on any witnesses. If that had happened, you would have left the long weekend only with the videos that the state presented you, which was 8 hours of Ronan only in his room and only getting in trouble. It was not until the defense put on a case that any context was provided to what was going on in this home in a daily basis. It is their obligation to present you with all the facts or the relevant facts.
Sustained.
It is their obligation to present you with...
Oh, she mad. Oh. She
The
smiled
objection
too.
is sustained. It's not the state's burden to present with all the facts. It's the state's burden to present all the relevant facts material to the case that's being decided by the jury.
Oh,
May
that's not
continue,
good.
Ms. Mariah.
Oh,
And
Lord.
what is material in this case is all of the evidence of what was happening on a day-by-day type of basis. And what the state said in their closing is that, yes, of course, there were occasional times when he was out, and that doesn't negate any sort of abuse that happened. In a case like this, the reason that it is essential is because it allows you to understand the context of the relationship between this father and this son. Their expert, using only the 40 videos that they provided, testified that every time Ronan was around Tim Ferriter, you would see him tense up and be in fear. And when he was in trouble, that was in fact the case, like any child. But when he was eating freely in the home, or watching football with his dad, or doing yard work that all the kids were doing when they were putting up the different tiki torches, he wasn't acting like that around his dad. Because that is not a constant state in this family. It is not a constant state for Ronan, and it is not a constant state for Tim Ferriter. There are other things that happen during the day. And we went through the videos and tried to provide, let me see.
Oh, no. Struggling.
Sort of a breakdown of the time that Ronan actually spent sleeping in his room and not in his room. And what you can see is that 43% of the time is spent sleeping. There's one time that they come in the middle of the night, you can see it in the videos, and wake him up to look at his room, and that's on a day that there was a stolen iTouch. I'll show you that. And there are 2 to 3 times that he wakes up to use the bathroom. Other than that, he spends the vast majority sleeping at night. The time that he spends in his room, not asleep, changes over time, depending on if he's in trouble, if he's in a timeout, but that's about a quarter of his day. And the rest of it he spends at school, at home, playing with his friends, doing chess club, and all the other things that kids do.
Oh, windy.
And so I want to go back to this video that the state presented of him being locked out. So the state alleged that Ronan was locked out of his home in Jupiter, and they showed you one video. That is in fact not the case. And so the first video is what the state admitted into evidence from January 22nd at 12:19 p.m.
Oh.
We've admitted as Defense Exhibit 18, and that's available for you. You'll get all the exhibits at the end of the day. The other videos that give context to this one. Because what was actually happening is that Ronan was gardening with his dad from about 9:30 in the morning.
Sustained.
It's in the videos that you can see that are admitted as Defense Exhibit 18. And his father actually brings him water in those videos that are admitted in evidence, and you can see for yourself.
Can we have counsel approach, please?
No. Oh. Yeah. Oh, he grabbed his ass. Run! Sometimes we gotta run. I was about to go live on the backup channel too, but it's already over. We don't get any good chases. Run! Oh! Okie doke. Okay, going back. I mean, I guess there's nothing to hear with just the helicopter. Run. So it's like two of them. We got ourselves a chase, boys. Ain't nothing coming anymore, man. Nothing good anymore. I should have the laptop ready to go, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's over anyway. Well, the cop grabbed him, trying to save him. Oh, they're searching. So what happened? Why'd they interrupt? Them boys gone. Well, let's see. I don't know. I ran, bro. I was about to launch it because I already kind of have a setup, but I had to change that setup because I was doing taxes the other day. But I kind of have a setup that if we're doing a trial, I can still do this mini screen, but I can also on the backup channel jump on there and do my regular commentary and pause. I mean, not pause, but mute myself here. Defense attorney's in trouble. What'd she say? She was stating non-factual information. Oh, look at she going in too, though. Oh, they got him. Horrible timing. That boy started there and just jumped off the thing. I would let him go. That was nice of the cop try to catch him. I was let ask. All right, sometimes you gotta lose one, you know. I'll let him go. I mean, it's not like the cop tried to jump over either, though. So I guess this is Tim Faraday's family too. I mean, obviously his wife, but I was noticing kind of like this blonde lady here. Somebody was asking earlier, what is his mother and father still alive? Tim, I don't know, and if they're there. And she was trying to argue. She was like, you know, he was not. They're saying he's in a box, but he's in a room. That's what she was trying to say.
All right, Ms. Murad, you may continue.
Thanks, Rich. I'm now going to play one of the videos that the defense put in. Under Defense Exhibit 18, there's 3 that offer context to what's going on here. And you can see that several minutes later, several minutes later, Ronan enters through the back door. And again, this is why this is important. You have to have the full picture of this parent-child relationship in order to make any determination about what the parent-child relationship is. And it does not justify the actions that Tim Ferriter took. That was those were bad choices that he made, and we are not disputing that they were harmful to Ronan. What it does not prove is all the elements that the state has to prove, particularly as it relates in what we're talking about now to whether or not there's intent, whether or not it was malicious punishment, whether or not it was torture, whether that's what it constituted. The defense admitted a 14-hour video. We did not show you the entire video because you watched many, many hours of the state's video. However, the entire 14 hours is in evidence. And what we tried to do is provide, as much as we could, different days and different sort of experiences that Ronan was having. And it's not just relevant to show the context. It's also relevant to show what's actually true about what happened. This idea that Ronan didn't have the ability to eat snacks when he wanted to. One of the videos that we watched, he was watching football and there was a bag of popcorn on the dining room table, and he grabs the entire bag and starts to eat it. This is after the state's expert, Wade Myers, who relied on only 40 of the 21,000 videos, said that this child, and that's part of his opinion, right? Why it's solitary confinement, why he believed it was torture, why he believed it was malicious. He is relying on facts that are not the whole truth. And so, of course, if you only watch those videos or the 40 that the state sent him, you're going to think, as you probably did after watching 8 hours of video, that the entire life of this child is in this room. And that is not true. You saw him playing outside. Prior to January 5th, you see him frequently outside. I know it looks like Tim Ferriter only watches football for a living, but it was December 31st and January 1st, and so there were a ton of football games coming on. If you go later, I think we showed you January 5th, 7th, 9th. You can see them walking outside as a family, playing in the cul-de-sac, playing with Pierce, who clearly really loves Ronan. Ronan fixing up a scooter that he had. That is also the life of this child. Fiona testified, and so did Ronan. This is a busy family. I think in every video you saw Tracy running around in the back from, place to place, grabbing Pierce. But you have 3 kids that are around 13, 14 years old, all with their own activities, right? Nola has softball, Fiona has band, Ronan at the time had chess club. And so all these people are running around. They are not eating meals at the same time. They are not sitting around their kitchen table, excluding Ronan, who's in his room. And the videos will corroborate that, should you wish to watch 14 hours of video. That is what you will see, that people are running around getting snacks. Tracy, at one point, we didn't end up watching this in the 3 hours that we presented, makes cookies for everybody, and Ronan partakes in that. You see him in the earlier videos, I think it was December 29th, coming back with little styrofoam boxes of leftovers. Wade Myers and the state are alleging that he had no control over his movement, where he went. And yes, at night, he was in the room with a lock on the door so that he could not get out, so that he could not run away or harm himself or do something around the house or get knives like he did before. That's at night. During the day, he went to school. He was with his family. And there were days that he was in trouble, and we're going to talk about that. And he would be in his room as a timeout because he was not allowed to engage with everybody when he's in trouble, when he gets in trouble at school. The videos, again, it's 14 hours, do get tedious. But the reason it's important is that there are extended periods of time every single day that you see Ronan have full control over his movement, what he's eating, where he's going, walking around the house, playing outside, doing yard work sometimes. We talked about that. Chores like everybody else had in the family. That is a family. That is the life of a child. There are days when you are doing chores that you do not want to do, and there are days that you have to help your dad out with the yard and the tiki torches, and there are days you are chilling on the couch with your dad, watching football. There are days where you are in trouble, in really big trouble, and you are crying in your room because you are so frustrated that either you're in trouble with your parents or you did something that you didn't intend on doing. And it is the life of a parent that sometimes you need help with the random stuff that your wife's making you do around the house. You have your son help you out, that you're running around dropping the kids off so you don't have time for everybody to sit down and have a meal or have a breakfast that is exactly the same or have make everybody a different breakfast every day. You're dealing with the stuff that your kid did at school. You're getting emails back and forth and having to deal with that. Go to the school, drop the other kid off, and go to work, pay your bills. That is the life of a parent. And sometimes you get frustrated with your kids and you do things that you regret. That is the life of a parent. And that is the life of a child. And sometimes kids and their parents are on exactly the same page, and it is a really good day. And sometimes you couldn't be on further off planets and you are mad at each other. And you say things you regret and you do things that you regret. But that does not make you a criminal.
Overruled.
I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the videos that you saw and what happened during the course of this 6 weeks. So a really important day is January 5th. And you can see from the videos that January 5th was the first day of school. And I want to give you context for what happened prior to January 5th. There's a video in which you can hear Tim getting really mad at Ronan and saying, you just got kicked out of basis. We got to start this school off right. We cannot be in a situation where you are getting kicked out again from school after school. And Ronan admitted on cross-examination that at basis, he did in fact jailbreak a school laptop, right? That does not belong to him or his parents. And did violent searches on it that were very concerning to his parents, and that they responded to that because as a 14-year-old child, you should not be doing searches like that. And on January 5th in the evening, Ronan is asked, did he do a search after he jailbroke a tablet? And was there something concerning to mom and dad? So we talked about this. Now, when we get to January 5th, the state presented some of this video. I would like to present all of it. And the state represented that the reason Ronan was in trouble on January 5th was for something as minor as stealing candy. That is not true, and that is not what the videos and the state's own evidence
They
show.
said chocolate.
So I'm going to go through these one by one. I also want to point out that at this time on January 5th, they moved probably, week 2 before, based on the records. He still has everything in his room. He has his toys, he has his bed, he has his computer, he has all the posters that he likes. This is a time before he got in trouble, and it's a real turning point in this 6-week period.
You gonna play a little bit, or you're tired?
Yeah, we'll play a little bit.
you can see there that there is something going on in this corner that Ronan is doing, and you'll see more context as we go through that he had something he was not supposed to have. And he was hiding it right where he wouldn't be able to check.
You gonna play a little bit, or you're tired?
Yeah, we'll play a little bit.
Now you'll see Ronan rearranging the entire desk and bed arrangement.
I don't know, you have to see.
So at this point, he's moved his desk, right? And we saw in the other videos that they want the Chromebook. It was specifically, you can see Tim when he puts it up on the 5th, that they want the Chromebook to point towards the table. You can see him almost adjust it in that video. And I understand why in any other circumstance that may seem like very unreasonable supervision for a child. A kid should be able to use their devices how they want. However, when a 14-year-old is using their devices in a manner that is destroying school property, that is breaking into the school's IT system, that is doing searches that the parents do not approve of and that are unsafe, then a parent, like Tim Ferriter, decides, I have to remove your technology. And when you use it, you have to be monitored. Because as Ronan testified, this is not the first time he jailbroke a school laptop. It happened at his school in Jupiter. It happened at his school in Basis. He broke into the IT system at Immaculate Heart. This is a consistent pattern, and you can't break school property, right? Someone has to pay for that. Someone has to answer for that. And what never happened is that Tim Ferriter called the police or told the school, take my kid to jail for committing a crime. He said, I'm going to handle it myself. And though he handled it very poorly, as you'll see here, there was a reason for everything that he did. And so we're going to watch these videos, which were showcased by the state, so that you can see what they presented and then previously what was the context to what happened. Because as you'll see, it was not about stealing candy. It was about stealing an iTouch that did not belong to him.
Want to tell me something? Stand up. Want to tell me something? What? Don't tell me what. This is your one chance. Don't look at me like an asshole. You want to tell me something or not?
I have a nightmare.
Yeah, from where?
Blue van.
Where?
Green van.
Excuse me?
Green van.
Stealing again?
What the fuck is wrong with you? You're
stealing,
so fucking
like,
disappointing.
Chocolate? And you got so much stuff in your
You're
room.
fucking great. You're just such a disappointment. You're gonna lose. I'm gonna take you out of that school, and you're gonna be in this room.
He's gonna be...
You're this close, because I can't trust shit you do. I'm gonna put the ankle bracelet back on, and then you can try to fucking run away if you want and do all the bullshit you do, but I'm gonna lock your ass down.
Because those are from a toy.
Give me a fucking break.
No. Why do you have all this tape?
I'm sick of the bullshit. You're a big boy, you're gonna steal, you're gonna talk to the police. I'm gonna give you a fucking real deal, okay? You're gonna steal from our fucking house?
Again?
Give me a fucking break, bro. What other shit do you got in here?
Nothing else.
Because you're gonna lose it all in about 2 seconds. Lose every fucking
It's
thing.
all gonna
All
be
this
smashed
shit.
real quick.
I told you not to unplug that fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you listen to me?
Yeah.
Bullshit,
No,
you
you
listen to me?
didn't. You
just
told
unplugged
it to plug this in, and then you're just a liar, Ronan. Just keep lying. You lied really when I asked you. You can't.
Fucking disappointing. You're a big boy, you're gonna steal, you're gonna talk to...
Throughout their closing argument, the state, when showing you some of these videos in Tim's own statement, says that's malice, that's anger. This is how maliciously is defined. Wrongfully, intentionally, and without legal justification or excuse. It later says that the primary purpose of the acts was to cause the victim unjustifiable pain or injury. In every video that you see in this case, you will see that there was a reason for what Tim Ferriter did. And you will also see, in light of the context in this case, that that moment that you saw, those 6 weeks, are a pinnacle of frustration, right? That tone, that frustration that you are hearing is after years of continuous efforts. I want to talk next about the child neglect instruction. In the instruction, one of the things that the state has to prove is that the parent did not provide care, supervision, and services necessary to maintain Ronan's physical or mental health. The state talked about the child neglect instruction briefly. In this particular case, we can see, so for example, the state said that there is no record of any treatment after 2019. As we discussed, that's not the case, and that's not what Dr. Rappa testified to. In fact, Dr. Rappa relied on medical records from about 2019 to 2021, where Ronan was being taken routinely to the doctor. Dr. Stuart Graham testified that there's no evidence of malnourishment. And the reason we felt that was important as the defense is because of this ongoing discussion about control over food, which, as you saw from the videos, is not consistent with the facts. When he was in trouble, he would be given food in his room. He even said, when we talked about the meals, he said he got the peanut butter and bananas on bread, and he said he was a pescatarian. And so I said, so you were given a meal for a pescatarian? And he said, yes. When you watch the videos, you'll see that the family is eating, Ronan is out with them, and there are times when he's in trouble and he has to eat in his room. You'll also see that the other kids are not eating around the table without Ronan. Everyone's grabbing and going and running like any family. We talked about his ability to manipulate the air conditioning and how that's not neglect, that there was a safety concern there after he almost started the electrical fire. He went to the doctor routinely. So now we need to talk about whether or not there was a valid legal reason to what happened. And this applies very specifically to the unlawful caging element of aggravated child abuse and to false imprisonment. So under the law for false imprisonment, I want to read it to you exactly. It states as follows: that you forcibly, secretly, or by threat confine, imprison, or restrain Ronan against his will, and that you had no lawful authority to do so. Parents do have lawful authority to contain their children.
Sustained. The jury will rely on the court statement of the law and not counsel's statement.
When a parent has a child, right, a really young child, who has to, we're talking about a toddler here, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. When you have a child who can't be trusted, right, they are contained. And as a parent, you do have a right to put your child in a timeout. You don't have a right for it to rise to the level of abuse, and I'm not trying to suggest that at all. What I am saying is that a parent can make a decision that the safety of that child, and in this particular case, Ronan is running away, as you saw from Tim, who was saying, you've got me forever, but you have to stop. Because if you keep running away and you keep lying to people about who you are, you're going to get hurt in this world. You have the ability, and that's why it's lawful authority, to say, you cannot leave your room.
Sustained.
As to the unlawful caging, that parental affirmative defense applies to the entirety of aggravated child abuse. So when we're talking about whether a parent's actions...
I'm going to overrule that based on prior conferences that the court had with both sides on jury instructions.
applies to the entirety of aggravated child abuse, that parental affirmative defense. And so the decision that you're making is not, would I have done that in Tim's situation, but whether Tim felt it was reasonable to do that in light of the unique circumstances
Sustained.
that he was facing as a parent.
All right, jury's instructed to disregard the last comment of counsel. You may continue, Ms. Moran.
That reasonableness element that you are determining, right, as to what a reasonable parent would do, it is under these circumstances. And the circumstances that Tim Ferriter was facing are different than the circumstances of another person who may be in that chair. The circumstances that Tim Ferriter was facing are important in your determination. Because he had a child who, as Dr. Rappa testified, had no impulse control, wasn't stopping, and who by his own testimony was breaking the rules routinely despite knowing that there were boundaries. And these are not just minor incidents. The state can pinpoint a few minor incidents, but the reality is that their own expert knows that the child had an attachment disorder. That expert testified that there were no suspensions in the record. That's not true, and Dr. Rappa explained that. Ronan admitted to that in his own deposition, which Dr. Rappa relied on. This idea that the behavior was so minimal that it didn't matter couldn't be further from the truth. There are doctor's visits as early as 2017, when Ronan was probably 8 years old, documenting, as Dr. Rappa testified to, uncontrollable tantrums that are consistent with having an attachment disorder, of harming other kids at school. There are school records that Dr. Rappa testified to saying this is getting dangerous, and it is not stopping, right? That's what she said. It's that lack of predictability and the persistence that is really important in understanding the circumstances that Tim Ferriter had. Because those are the only two things we can rely on, right? Is that when you ask someone to stop doing something, they'll stop. And that when you, and of course it's a little different with a child, you give them a little bit more room to grow, but there comes a point where that stops too, where it's becoming dangerous, where they're not allowed to run out of the house in the middle of the night, where they're not allowed to steal knives from a location where the knives do not belong to them. The fact that they did not utilize the knife doesn't matter for a 10-year-old. You shouldn't have knives. The fact that you are doing searches on your computer for violent things. You're not allowed to have access to computers if you do that. So those circumstances are unique to Tim Ferriter. And that lack of predictability Dr. Rappa talked about, right? We expect people to act in a certain way. And the thing about that impulse control and lack of emotional regulation is that there is no expectation with Ronan. There are good days and there are bad days, and you see that in the video. There are days where he's hanging out and nothing's happening, and there are days where he is so frustrated he is screaming in his room. Those good days and bad days are consistent based on what Dr. Rappa and Wade Myers testified about with someone with that attachment issue or complex PTSD. That both admit the Ferriters didn't cause. And behaviors and issues consistent prior to 2018.
Carly Russell found guilty in fake abduction.
After I am done, the state has the opportunity to have a rebuttal.
1 year in jail.
I do not have that opportunity. This is the last time that I get to talk to you. And so I want to discuss, again, reasonable doubt. Before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about, the jury credibility instruction. You heard testimony from Fiona, and the state talked about how it was consistent with what Ronan said. What you will recall about my colleague's cross-examination of Fiona and also mine of Ronan is that there were things that were either not remembered or misremembered. And I don't think that these kids are lying. I think that Fiona is a teenager who has her own life going on and doesn't always remember and doesn't know everything that happened with Ronan, right? Her parents are not telling her every single thing. Mr. Waugh had asked her about specific acts that had happened, and she didn't know about them. She also said that he never went to a marching band practice, and we were permitted to admit this exhibit, showing Ronan at her marching band practice, that he was never permitted to do homework in the house. And there he is doing homework with her in the house. And the state can say all they want that, oh, these, minimal incidents, they don't minimize this, that, or the other, but it does challenge the credibility of the witnesses. Because Ronan initially said that he never got food, that he occasionally was fed in Florida. You can see on the videos that's not the case. You can also see that when I questioned him, I, went up to him with his deposition and said, look, when you were in a deposition and sworn under oath, you said you got every meal. And he said, that's right, I agree. So at the end of the day, these are children. And the best evidence is going to be the videos that you see. And I encourage you to watch that 14-hour video as best you can during the course of this. So now let's talk about reasonable doubt. So the instruction that you will get and the judge has read to you, but I want to highlight a portion of it, is this. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, a speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt. Such a doubt must not influence you to return a verdict of not guilty if you have an abiding conviction of guilt. On the other hand, if after considering carefully, comparing and weighing all the evidence, there is not an abiding conviction of guilt, or if having a conviction, it is one which is not stable, but one which wavers and vacillates, then the charge is not proved beyond every reasonable doubt, and you must find the defendant not guilty because the doubt is reasonable. Reasonable doubt is one of the earliest terms that we learn about in our civic education, our legislature, and here's why it's so important. This is a decision that is probably more permanent than every important decision you have made in your life. You will go back there as jurors, you will come to a verdict, and that will be it. If you get married, you can decide to have a divorce.
Sustained.
This decision is one that you cannot change, unlike many decisions in your regular life. And that is why we have an instruction that says if you waver and vacillate, if you think, you know what, you shouldn't have done that, I think he might be guilty, but then in another minute, you're like, there was a reason for this. I think that affirmative defense applies. You must find him not guilty. If you think he might be guilty, you must find him not guilty. If you think he could be guilty, you must find him not guilty. And the one thing that I am telling you is you do not have to like Tim Ferriter, and you do not have to like what he did. Because what he did was wrong. And he will have to live with that for the rest of his life. When Ronan testified, he said, Tim and Tracy were just acting out a frantic surprise of my emotions. And he said, forgive them and move on.
Sustained.
That is his testimony. And so when you are back there deliberating, understand that Tim Ferriter made bad choices and you do not have to agree with them. But whether or not what he did amounts to a crime under the law is a different question altogether. And it is one that the state has not proven. I'm asking that you find him not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Murad. Rebuttal?
They're gonna take like 2 hours or something to rebuttal this. You're gonna break down, dissect everything. They're gonna break it down. By the way, with this chase thing or whatever, I think one person's caught
Ms.
and
Murad,
one
just
person
see
is
Ms. Black, the,
not on the run.
Thank you. You may begin, Ms. Black.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did.
Are you going to be using the screen?
I'm not.
All right, you can go ahead and cut it off then. All right, thank you.
Defense just got up here and told you that the horrible act of parenting is not a crime. But in this case, it is a crime. Because it's about what a reasonable parent would or would not do. Because what Tim Ferriter did was not reasonable. Now, defense got up here and talked about the horrible things that Ronan Ferriter did, the dangerous things that he did, the reasons why he had to be locked up. But you have to remind yourself, these are things that he did when he was 11 years old. He is a child. He is in elementary school. Kids in elementary school will get in fights. Sometimes they'll go ahead, make jokes. He decided to go into his sister's classroom and tell the class that she was lying, made her cry. He decided to get into a fight with another child. But none of these actions amount to the treatment that he got from the defendant. Because you have to put it into perspective. These things happened when he was 11, 10. Yet when he's 14 in Jupiter, Florida, in that box, that's why. Because of the things that he did when he was 11. They talk about how the behavior was escalating.
I think tag team. You got the other one.
But what behavior? The lying about stealing chocolate? The bad attitude that he had when his father put his hands on him, threw him on the bed? The bad attitude that he had when he was throwing his Legos around, taking off his posters because he didn't know how to handle the trauma that the defendant caused him. That was the bad attitude that he had. Now, defense also spoke about how Dr. Rappa had records of after the fact. How in 2022 there was a neuropsychological done. But you also have to remember that this evaluation was done after the defendant had been arrested for these charges. You also get to take into consideration the fact that it is a self-reporting evaluation. That the things that Ms. Ferriter told the doctor, those are the things that she wanted to tell the doctor.
Overruled.
In light of the court's ruling in my class, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Dr. Rappa also talked about that in this evaluation that there were changes, there were certain levels in his inhibition, his emotions. But she also testified that this is because of the way that the defendant treated him. She got up there on the stand and said that this is not malicious. This is just how they had to deal with it. This was the end result for them. Not malicious. Yet, she never spoke to the defendant. She never interviewed him. She never got...
I'm sorry? Overruled.
She never got the chance to find out why. And for her, it was pure speculation as to why. The biggest thing here is the criminal intent. Now, we already talked about this in jury selection. What does intent mean? A lot of the jurors would say words, actions, past behavior. And that's what the state has presented you with.
Lowe's knows to expect the unexpected. So when you need an appliance fast, we've got you covered with trusted brands.
Towards Ronan.
Sorry about it.
Because it's the intent to do these things. Under the aggravated child abuse statute, under the instruction, there's 3 different ways. It doesn't have to be each one. It's not an and. It's an or. That he was unlawfully caged, or that he was maliciously punished, or that he was unlawfully and willfully tortured. And we have presented evidence of all 3. You might go back up there and say, you know what, I don't think that they prove that he maliciously punished him. But he did unlawfully cage him. And that's still guilty of aggravated child abuse. There is also, the defense also brought up the fact that Ronan was explosive, that he was violent. But there was no evidence of that during that 6-week period in Jupiter, Florida. If you see the videos in both the state's videos and the defense videos, he was docile. He seemed nervous around his parents. At one point in the defense videos, he's standing next to the couch while his father's watching TV. He doesn't know whether he should sit down or not. He doesn't know how the defendant's going to react.
Sustain.
But eventually, you will see that he sits there and he'll look at the father's reaction.
Sustain. Excuse me, overruled on that.
You will also see in some of the videos how he acts in the room, that he's withdrawn, that he doesn't have that stimulation. I know defense got up here and showed you January 5th. That was the big picture. He had his Legos, he had his desk, he had his bed, he had everything. But throughout each day, there's less and less and less. They try to say that this was the result of a timeout. But we all know that from Dr. Myers, a timeout is not a long duration of time. If they wanted to call a timeout, it's a timeout from January 5th, 2022 to January 28th, 2022. Again, not reasonable. Defense also brought up that this was a natural response to control the child. That if a child stole a car, what do? You take the keys away, you take the car away. And that it's not taken to the extreme. But making a child go to the bathroom in a bucket, that is taking it to the extreme. They said that they wanted to lock the door at night because they were scared of him running away, scared of him causing harm to himself, scared of all these things would happen to him. But there was no evidence of that. He couldn't even leave in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. He had to be degraded and dehumanized and use that bucket. Not only that, but you saw in multiple videos that the animals had the freedom to go around the house. Yet he was the one that was locked in that box.
Overruled. Jury can rely on their own understanding of the evidence that was presented and published to you.
In reference to the violence that the defense was talking about, there was only 2 times that was brought up. And that was in Arizona, in which the defendant's not being charged with. We're specifically talking about a time frame in December of 2021 to January of 2022. They also brought up that they had to keep Ronan in this box because it was this way. That's what they had to do. They had no other option. They had no other choice. This is what had to be done in order to protect them. But you know what else could have been done? The medicine, the therapy, that could have been done. Both experts testified that there were only a handful of times that Ronan had gone to a mental health professional. One of the experts testified that there were about 2 or 3 30-minute sessions. Is it reasonable to think that in 2 30-minute sessions, the problem is going to be solved? No. But the defendant, the solution to that is putting that kid in that box. Not trying to find other providers. Not trying to find
Overruled.
different medications that may have worked for him. But no, that was their solution. Both experts also testified that this was not the proper solution. This is not what you do when you have a child with these issues. This is not what you do when you have a child that just wants to be loved, that wants to be part of that family.
Sustain. Move on. Jury is instructed to disregard the last comment of counsel. You may continue.
There was also a comment about Dr. Myers not watching all 21,000 videos. Yet Dr. Rappa did not watch all 21,000 videos either.
Let's watch them. Yeah, hell no.
And again, they went to some doctors and then it stopped. They didn't follow the advice. And again, no doctor told them.
Overruled as to that. Again, the jury is instructed to rely on your own recollection of the evidence in any determination you make.
The biggest thing here is that the crime occurred in the only space that Ronan had known for long periods of time. The state never made any allegations that he was in there 24/7. The state never said that he had never left his room. He did. But you have to also look at the fact that the only time he left his room was when there was a parent around. When they told him, you're allowed to come out. When they told him and they would stand there and follow him out. Those were the only times he was allowed from the room. There was also times that he did not control the light. It was the defendant who would control the light, whether it was on during the day, whether it was off during the day, whether it was on at night. He also controlled the air conditioner. You heard testimony in the videos that the defendant did not want him touching that air conditioner. Even at points where Ronan says it's too hot, still told him, do not touch it. I know defense got up here and they started talking about the affirmative defense to the aggravated child abuse and to the lesser of the child abuse. There is no affirmative defense here. because what the defendant did was not reasonable. It was not reasonable to lock him in a box. It was not reasonable to leave him in the dark. It was not reasonable to take the light away from him. It was not reasonable to leave him in the room with no air conditioning. It was not reasonable to make him pee in a bucket. There was no legal justification for any of this. And because of that, you should find the defendant guilty of all 3 counts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Let me have counsel approach, please.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, it's a good thing they just put her for the rebuttal. But I'm glad that didn't take long either to do the rebuttal. I don't know what I'm doing with this shit. This is not the best idea. I don't know. I thought it might be in my mind. It thought it was, but like not really, because there's no audio with this chase thing. It's just there's nobody. Just I guess I don't know who's in there. I'm not talking, but I think there's one guy gone. I replayed it on the backup channel. I'll see if we have time. I'll replay this real quick. And I guess they're gonna do tomorrow's gonna be verdict watch, so we're gonna have to figure out what to do during verdict watch tomorrow. Where's that at? Pupscan. Mr. Pupscan. Pupscan. Let's see. There's no audio, but the guy going fast as hell down the highway. Swear, banged into the side of the thing, almost hit another car. Ooh. And then 3 people jumping out of that. I thought it was just 2, but it's 3. And one guy kind of slowed down casually. What's up? Did this go slow? Oh, they got his ass. But the other one like jumped over, I think. Oh, he's hauled out. That boy gone. Ooh, oh god, jump right over. Oh, okay, so that's what's the we didn't see. Let's say the other guy. Wow. Mason. One guy got away.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know it's late in the day, and I know this has been a long trial that's already run over, but because of the lateness of the hour, I have additional instructions to read that I'm not going to read until tomorrow morning. That way you will be starting your deliberations fresh. We have concluded everything, though, at this point, so the next stage will be moving into the deliberation. So at this point, I'm going to ask that you come back tomorrow at 8:30 for the beginning of deliberations. I have additional instructions to read to you at that time, but what I don't want to have happen is me send you into the jury room this afternoon and there'll be a rush to judgment or a rush to deliberations because of the lateness of the hour. So I think the better form and practice at this point is to have you come back tomorrow. We'll start at 8:30. You should plan on, once the deliberations start, I typically go no later than 6 p.m. on most days. And if the jury is not able to stay until 6, then we usually end at 5 on days that are where jury deliberations are actually occurring. I never know how long deliberations are going to occur, but I do like to give my jurors some idea of what the normal workday is once deliberations start. So for you, then the process will be pretty much the same as it's been up to this point. Go home, relax, have a good dinner, good night's rest, because tomorrow will be a full and long day. You won't be out here in court. You will be in the jury room deliberating, but that will be a process that you'll experience firsthand tomorrow. Remember, during the break, don't discuss the case. You know everything about the case there is to know at this point, so more than ever, make sure you don't discuss the case with each other or with anyone else or do any kind of research, investigation, or any of the number of things that I've instructed you during the course of this trial not to do. The last thing I'll tell you is make sure you don't inadvertently expose yourself to any media coverage of this, including video or print coverage at this point. Other than that, go home, have a good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow at 8:30 in this courtroom for start time.
I gotta fix I gotta figure this thing out for the laptop. After. Oh, so I should. Oh, wait, what time did they say? Did they say what time they're coming tomorrow? I didn't even hear. What time? Oh, he's smiling. Huh? What?
Deputy, can you have them just come to the door? I should have told them when they need to check in tomorrow, and I didn't. So let me do that. If you can just have them come to the door. They don't have to come back out here. You don't have to file back out here. I just want all the jurors to know I neglected to tell you when to check in with the jury office. Can everybody hear me? All right, so just check in at 8 o'clock in the morning. Be up at the 11th floor at 11:15 to check in with the bailiff, and he'll bring you back into the jury room between 8:15 and 8:30 for an 8:30 sharp start time. All right? Thank you. I heard one of the jurors ask that question, so I covered it. All right, thank you. All right, everyone may be seated. All right, anything else I need to address before we reconvene tomorrow? All right, court is in recess. I'll see everybody tomorrow.
They said what time? 8:30 tomorrow. 8:30 sharp. 7. Day 7. I'm gonna set up the stream right now. Kind of a long day. Well, it started late. It feels like it's been all the entire day though. I don't know. Oh, maybe because we streamed earlier in the backup channel. It was a long day, man. All right, so we put up day 7 for tomorrow. So y'all think for sure guilty? They're gonna get his ass. Thing is, how long they're gonna get his ass? I don't wonder how long they're gonna just stay out there to this chopper and stuff. Looking at nothing. Day 7. So I don't know. We'll find something to watch tomorrow and talk about during verdict watch, I guess. I hope it's not the entire day just sitting there. Killer just gotta find a way to kill 7 hours, 8 hours. Verdict watch really not my thing. Usually I'd rather just like chill out and then boom. When they say it's time, just jump on, you know? Day 7 tomorrow at 8:30. Damn, 8:30? Did he really say 8:30? That's early. I just realized that. I'm barely getting back to the house. It's at 8:30. When I jury duty, no, I think it took us, we almost gave up when I did jury duty. I think we figured it out the same day, if not the second day. It was at least a couple hours. I think, yeah, 8:30. You guys said 8:30. Wow. Damn, we're going to have to like rush back and like just jump here to just immediately start. Okay. I mean, not going to be missing anything, instructions, but. All right. So I'm going to set the redirect. I'm going to test this, figure out this thing on the backup channel. This audio thing, muffled audio. It's trash headphones, I guess. Okay, so I set that up. Oh, let me make sure real quick today. I want to make sure I get the super chats. Any that I missed. Let's see. MJ, thank you for the 3 months. Melissa Mellies, thank you for the super chat. Says there's an unfathomable amount of Melissas in this chat. We're number 1, LOL. Wendy Hamilton, thank you for the 5 months. Says Chase in Oakland. Legendary CEO, 7 months. Thank you for the super sticker. And that's it. 8:30 Eastern. We're back in the morning, man. All right. 8:30 Eastern. Love you guys. Who said 15:30?